Hi guys, it's Sandra here from Creating in Spain. Now I'm actually releasing this on the very day that I'm making it, which is quite unusual, but there is a reason for that. It is Easter Sunday. I am not in the slightest bit religious, but I know people who are. And what I woke up to this morning when I sat to have my coffee and my computer time just reading the paper was horrendous terrorism in Sri Lanka, with about 100 people dead so far and probably more to follow, and hundreds more injured. And I found that incredibly depressing, very sad, as well as very tragic, and I felt like cheering myself up and hopefully you lot as well. So the objective for this particular video is to spread a little cheer and to ask you to do something nice for somebody. Not even necessarily somebody you know. Just do something nice for someone, whether it's making a cake and giving it to a neighbour, whether it is paying the toll at a motorway toll booth for someone behind you, whatever. Just do something nice for someone. It could be, just going to see the elderly couple down the road that don't get any visitors, taking them a spare Easter egg that you really don't need, anything. What I'm going to do is start off with some watercolour card, because most of my card doesn't take to heat embossing that well, so I figure watercolour paper is probably best. I have a very pale mint green, slightly shimmery base card. It's a rather nice looking card. In fact, I think that's bent round the wrong way. Okay, no outtakes. But this one I want to make a really nice floral card that's bright and cheerful and bubbly and lovely. So I'm starting off with this, and I have some flower stamps that I've made. I have this little selection in here. I have some bigger ones, and of these bigger ones I've actually done some different size ones on my silver bullet with pen and cut them out, and so those are going to go on top. And I have a sentiment that I'm going to use a slightly different treatment for as well. So I think I've got everything I need here, from my clear embossing powder, my platinum embossing powder, some glitter, which is off to the side. I'm going to move that out of the way. That's a bit of a surprise. And I've got my pens and things to hand. So I think I'm all ready. So first off, I want to actually stamp some images on here with some Versamark, because relatively unusual for me, I'm actually going to do some heat embossing. I'm hoping not to actually do any outtakes with this. Famous last words. Me and heat embossing don't usually get on that well. So yes, I'm hoping. But since the aim of the exercise today is to make you smile, if not laugh out loud, I'll try not to edit any outtakes out of it for you. So if I really make a mistake, then you're going to have a good giggle at my expense. Who cares? Right, I've got some talcum powder in here and an old makeup brush, so just for once I've remembered to actually use it before I start my embossing. Usually I forget until I've got smudges of embossing powder everywhere. That's a fairly typical behaviour for me. Right, I'll put that out of the way. So I'm just going to do some random flowers in different places. I don't want it to be all big flowers. Now you see, the problem with this is you can't see the ink. What I should do is actually take the time to tint my Versamark. I'm sure if I put a couple of drops of pale pink watercolour on it, it would be fine. I just haven't done it. And I can't see a thing there, so I'm going to have to do this in stages. Right, I'm going to put that on there. Keeping them well apart means I know I'm not going to be overlapping it. And I'm going to put the bigger one just there. Right. Okay, so I think the first thing I'm going to have to do is to put my embossing powder on that, because if I don't, I'll be stamping over the top of it. And that's not the effect I'm looking for at the moment. Okay, so in here I've got some Wow Platinum embossing powder. Now, I've not got much left in here, so I'm not that bothered if I mess... Well, I haven't got much in here. Probably as much as you get in a small container, but I have a big container of it. I'm going to try something a little different today, and I've got some really super duper sparkly glitter in here. Now I've probably got about 4 spoonfuls at least of the embossing powder. Let's try 1 teaspoon of glitter in there. This could be interesting, or it might not do anything much. I honestly have no idea where it will, because this being a metallic, maybe it adds, maybe it has a slightly different effect if I add glitter to it than it does if you have one of the other ones. It looks quite sparkly, but is that sparkly enough, do you think? Nah. Okay, let's add a bit more. Hopefully it will still stick. I'm going to put the lid on that before I do something drastic with it. I mean, I already know that I'm going to get sparkly embossing powder absolutely everywhere. I nearly always do. I do have a piece of paper underneath my core panel, so yeah, there's hope. Not a lot, I grant you, but there's some hope. And I'm going to get a pair of tweezers to grab my panel here. On to the heat embossing, and I'm sprinkling this powder on fairly heavily because it's fine lines. Had a look at it a bit later, and yes, the glitter does seem to have made a difference. So that's me dusting off before I put another layer of embossing on. And this time I'm using my stamp jig to line things up so I can do the whole lot in one go without having to do individual stamps. I must get around to tinting my embossing ink, because it's nigh on impossible to see it when you've actually used Versamark. Oh, excuse me while I shiver. It's cold here. It's done nothing but rain for about 3 days. I could do that heat tool on me at the moment. So this is applying the second lot of embossing powder. It's the same one. And there is a nice mistake that will become obvious in a moment or two. That's a very heavy printed one, that one. Maybe I made a mistake on that one, I don't know. But it's fine, it's just going to be a glittery flower. I don't care. You know this blobby bit here, I've just realised why it's like that. I put the stamp on upside down. I told you it was like to have some outtakes in there. I am going to be using some water brushes, and I've got a mixture here of ones which I purchased in Lidl and some that Sakura sent me, which are Koi branded ones. So I have a reasonable selection, and I also have some Lidl water brushes which have just got the water in. And now I'm colouring in these flowers with the watercolour pens, and the easiest way of doing this is to do what I'm doing here, and that's just laying down a little bit of colour where you want the darkest colour to be, and then you can go in with a water brush and it will smooth it out just like magic. So here I am coming in with just the plain water in the water brush. As you can see, it doesn't take much effort to smooth it out, and to get this nice graduated colour through the petals. It's handy to have a cloth by your side or a piece of kitchen towel so that if you need to take any excess off the brush you can do that too. In this particular case, I managed to do most of it without bothering. I really do recommend that you try these sorts of brushes if you haven't had any watercolour experience. It just makes it so much easier. It's a simple way of doing things and it'll give you confidence in the long run. You can get some really nice effects, as you can see here. With the card base done, it's time to colour in the cutout flowers. And these being small are even easier to do. You can get away with doing just one shade if you want to, or you can ease it out with water. For the centres, I like to do two colours, put an orange or yellow in the centre and add a touch of a light brown over the top of that to add a bit of shadow. Now it's time for the sentiment, if I can keep it in my fingers. And this one says, just for you. And what I'm going to do with this is to colour it over, unfortunately it went off of camera, with a green water pen. When I did that, and I had got it the right colour, and it is a little bit larger than I need it to be, so I've just continued colouring to the edges. What I did then was I dried it off quickly with my heat tool and then I embossed it with some chunky clear embossing powder and I ended up giving it 3 coats. Tweezers come in very handy for this. I deliberately made the sentiment longer than I needed it so I could get the embossing powder right to the edges. Didn't matter if I got tweezer marks in it because I was going to trim those off. With that done, it's time to turn my attention to the cutout flowers, and I did the same with those with the Versamark and then the clear embossing powder, just to give them a little more depth and shine. Once I finished messing around with the embossing powder, it was time to have a clean up and to assemble the card. I used my frame jig to get the card lined up in the centre. I've trimmed it down just a fraction, added the sentiment and finally the flowers and a few embellishments. It was only after I put all the embellishments on I realised the top blue flower didn't have any embossing powder on it, so I cheated and I got out the triple thick, coated it with that, and you can't tell the difference, so I won't tell if you don't. So that's it, finally, the finished card. Please make today special for somebody. Take care now. Bye-bye.